Alright, it's time to talk about the Sniper class in patch 7.2 of Space Marine 2, his best perk setups, and what I think is currently his best build overall. Now, this class is in a very strong position currently. I would rank him the third strongest in the game behind Tactical and Bulwark, and really that's because of his new prestige perks, his purification buffs, and Pattern of Excellence being kind of OP. But the first thing I really want to talk about with him would be the core perk tree, starting with Block Break. Shots will penetrate enemy block stances, dealing 50% of the usual damage. This is by no means a bad perk, I just don't rank this super high, mainly because this only works against Bone Sword Warriors, the Trigun, the Zangor Shield guys, and the Biovores for the most part, and really 50% damage isn't super good in a lot of these weapons. That kind of like turns off our breakpoints, even with things like Targeted Shot on a last Fusel, and it makes us overall less ammo efficient when we're shooting guys, which is less of a problem than it used to be, because Versatile Precision is pretty damn OP. You can also take things like High Capacity. It's just that we do want to be mindful of our ammo at times, and 50% of the damage isn't like a super huge buff, and usually you're better off just waiting for them to open up their faceplates or just meleeing them down with things like Melee Mastery and Tactical Ambush, because this class actually does like a deceptively high amount of melee damage. So Block Break, not terrible, more like C tier. It does help sometimes, especially against Biovores, but for the most part, I haven't found this super valuable. Now, Melee Mastery. Melee damage increases by 20% against Majoris level and higher enemies. This is a pretty damn good amount of damage. 20% is hard to come by for melee bonus damage, and we already do a deceptively high amount of melee damage on this class with things like Adaptability, Tactical Ambush, with our Block Knife, because the Block Combat Knife is currently the best knife on this class, mainly because you have the speed and the crazy amount of damage with Adrenaline Rush charges on top of Shadow Stab that allows you to outright one-shot enemies in melee combat, even like Extremis enemies and Majoris. And this guy, in general, he doesn't really struggle with Minotaur's hordes that much, mainly because the Combat Knife has a pretty good setup with the Skull Crusher, on top of you having a bunch of very forgiving perks now, with things like Purification and Emperor's Grace for invulnerability. Now, Melee Mastery, pretty good. I'd say it's A tier, not like an S tier perk, because you don't really have to take this. It just happens to be the best in this tree, in my opinion, because Medicae Adept, you revive squad members 30% faster. This is a pretty trash tier perk, because like if somebody's going down so often that you're going to need to get them up 30% faster, they're probably not contributing a ton to begin with, and really revive speed is hardly a problem in this game in the first place. I think I can count on like one hand how many times I've been in a squad where like, oh my god, I can't get them up because I'm just not fast enough. And like usually people aren't going down that much anymore to begin with, and if they are, like I said before, they're probably not contributing a ton to begin with. Now, High Capacity, the maximum amount of ammo you can carry increases by 10%. More ammo is good. This class has some low ammo capacity for some of the weapons, especially things like the Bolt Sniper. This is not terrible by any means. I do take this thing with things like the fire rate versions of Last Fusel, fire rate versions of the Bolt Sniper. High Capacity can definitely be useful. People really seem to like Vantage Point. Remaining stationary for 2 seconds increases your ranged weapons damage by 20%. That is pretty good. 20% is a hefty chunk of damage. I just think it's kind of awkward to have to sit there for 2 seconds. And oftentimes, this game will have you moving a lot. Even if you're just trying to like dodge incoming range fire, you're either forced to move, usually doing like little pop shots or like pot shots with this class to begin with. And like being forced to stay stationary for 2 seconds, that is quite a long period of time. I don't really use this perk ever. And there are some breakpoints this can hit. I just think it's a little bit awkward. I think it's kind of like the antithesis of the Sniper's playstyle to begin with, because Sniper really is more like a melee slapfest on top of like dashing in and out of your cloak to get like insta-kill headshots. That's really the best way to play him on the highest difficulties, especially if you're in solo. Like if you just look at any like the highest true solo clears on this class, you'll just see that's how everybody's using him, because it's just how he's best at the moment. So Vantage Point, not horrific if you're playing in teams, pretty trash if you're trying to do like the ultimate meta build. Now, Adaptability, reloading while having low ammo or manually activating Camo Cloak increases melee damage by 25% for 10 seconds. 25% more melee damage is a lot. 10 seconds is a pretty big uptime, and activating Camo Cloak is usually when you're going to be using your Tactical Ambush to begin with. So this should definitely help you just like one-shot things like Majoris, one-shot things like Extremis, and even go after stuff like the boss spawns like Hive Tyrant, even the Trigon at times. So adaptability, pretty good. These are the two perks I usually swap between, and I kind of skip over Vantage Point. Now, Iron Grip. Weapon spread and recoil are reduced by 20%, and range damage against terminus level enemies is increased by 15% for both sniper rifles and stalker bolt rifles. Pretty boring perk, but also like the only perk you're ever going to take in this tree if you're using a bolt sniper or a stalker bolt rifle, because dexterous hands, bolt carbines reload 20% faster, and their weapon spread and recoil reduced by 15%. This does nothing for you if you're using a stalker bolt rifle or a bolt sniper, and vice versa for the bolt carbines, because these are just like weapon specific perks. And really, I think these things should be like turned into like either passive abilities for the actual weapons you're helping out here, because like there's no choice here. It's just a non-choice tree. Like lethal efficiency here, killing more than one enemy with one shot from a last fusel restores its charge by 1. You're always going to take this if you have a last fusel. You're always going to take this if you have a bolt carbine, and you're always going to take this if you're using a bolt rifle. So I think this is kind of boring. Probably rework these, probably just incorporate them into the actual weapons, in my opinion. Now, as far as team perks are concerned, headshot damage increases by 10% for all squad members. Now, this is I'm pretty sure this is a multiplicative perk for like on top of your base damage, mainly because marksmanship. I've tried to use this with things like the stalker bolt rifles, like 20% headshot damage on low HP, and I'm pretty sure the weapon perks can affect the actual base damage of the weapon, and this is on top of that. At least that's how it feels, because this 10% headshot damage increase is not nearly as noticeable as some of the weapon perks are, in my experience. Now, precision targeting, weapon spread is reduced by 25%, and range damage against extremis level enemies is increased by 10% for all squad members. I think this is pretty poor, and I really think like this whole extremis bonus should be like a damage increase to Majoris and up, because we already have like 15% damage bonuses on things like the tactical to range for your entire team, and this is just so much better than this perk on the sniper. And sniper is like a allegedly dedicated range class, even though he's really more of a hybrid class these days. But precision targeting, probably the weakest perk here. I would take both of these over, like both marksmanship and squad renewal over it, though squad renewal is by far the best here, with a headshot kill restores ability charge by 10% for any squad member. I think this is just the one that everyone's always going to take forever. These two should probably be reworked, if we're being honest, mainly because squad renewal just does too much. And it's so good that you don't even have to take the actual gear perk here for renewal. A headshot kill restores camo cloak's charge by 15%, because this just makes up for that entirely. And your gear perk tree has some of the best perks in this game already, with things like purification. Manually activating camo cloak removes negative status effects and restores all contested health. This perk is S tier. This is such a good perk. It makes things like boss fights tremendously easy. It gets you out of situations where you usually lose all of your contested health. If you combine this with things like Emperor's Grace, when camo cloak activates, you become invulnerable to damage for 2 seconds. You can pretty much just live through anything. This class is very, very hard to kill with purification, and this perk is just goated. And the fact it also removes negative status effects, this is like the only good perk that has that effect attached to it, because like it's just like a little bonus. So purification, S tier. I would pretty much always take this perk these days, because it's just that good. I have taken efficient readiness previously. Camo cloak increases movement speed by 20%, and manually activating camo cloak automatically reloads ranged weapons. This is pretty good with the bolt carbine, because you can pretty much just shoot your gun indefinitely, because I have used this quite a bit with the bolt carbine, and I do like it. I do think it is very good, and like when you have like a perk setup like this or something, for the bolt carbine, it's quite efficient. It's just that purification's too good to not take, in my opinion. And same thing with renewal. A headshot kill restores camo cloak's charge by 15%. If you combine these two together, it's 25%, and that's a pretty enormous chunk of camo cloak recharge. But camo cloak already comes back pretty easily alone with squad renewal, because, you know, Minoris, like Hormagaunts, Termagants, and Zangors are already so ever present in this game that you just get this constantly anyways, especially with a bolt carbine. So that's my opinion on this portion of the gear tree. Purification, just top tier. Now, Guardian Protocol. When you are reviving a squad member, camo cloak hides you and the squad member for 5 seconds without spending the charge. Cooldown is 30 seconds. This is a trash tier perk, especially considering the tree it's in, with targeted shot and tactical ambush for bonus damage on ranged weapons and melee weapons respectively out of cloak. This is just something you're never going to take. Guardian Protocol is trash. You're honestly trolling if you take this perk. It's just trash tier. And like, really, revive perks in this game are almost always trash tier outside of Bond of Brotherhood Brotherhood, because really all they're helping are like the worst possible players on your team usually. That might sound harsh, but like this game, most people aren't going down if they know what they're doing, and the people that are going down constantly, like this is not the thing that's going to save them or you, because you're probably going to help them more by just doing damage to the things that are killing them or going to kill you anyways. And this also helps you hit breakpoints. Targeted shot here with a 75% more damage from range attacks out of Cloak. This helps hit breakpoints of things like Last Fusel and Bolt Sniper. This is pretty meta, and a tactical ambush will straight up one-shot Extremis and do absurd amounts of damage to Terminus enemies. So really these two perks, super mandatory on this class, and Guardian Protocol, super trash. Now, Persistence. When Camo Cloak deactivates, you take 20% less health damage, do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, and cannot be knocked back for 10 seconds. This is a super goated perk, and I slept on this for a long time, but having a no knockback effect on this class is pretty rare. They used to have one for him with his Indomitable Spirit, which is like the no knockback on gun strikes. This used to be Adrenaline Boost, which is the perk Assault has now. They swapped them over, which is, you know, for perfectly timed parry, block, or dodge, you get no knockback. But now Sniper kind of got nerfed in that regard, because they're like, oh, wait a second, we don't want this guy to be a melee class, so they just gave him Indomitable Spirit. And this perk is pretty trashed here comparatively. And Persistence is really good because this is no knockback and less damage upon hitting one button that you get back all the time. So Camo Cloak, really good already. Persistence, really good. 20% less health damage is a pretty hefty chunk of damage reduction when you need it the most, especially when it's on command. Unfortunately, when you have Emperor's Grace active, this only becomes like 8 seconds of benefit because, first of all, Emperor's Grace, when you're invulnerable here, you are not just invulnerable to damage, you will not be moved or like touched by anything in the game. You can literally charge up your Shadow Stab while this is active, and you will just not get knocked over at all because these 2 seconds count as like you just being removed from the game. So this is really only 8 seconds of no knockback with that, and 8 seconds of 20% less health damage because, once again, you are invulnerable for 2 seconds with Emperor's Grace. But still really good because 8-second uptime is huge. Now, Lingering Concealment. After performing an attack that breaks Camo Cloak, you remain hidden for 2 seconds. This is a really good perk. It's just unfortunate this is currently bugged with Emperor's Grace, as far as I know, where if you use these two perks in conjunction, your Camo Cloak will just drain indefinitely. It will not just stop after the 2 seconds, and it's pretty terrible. I know it's unfortunate. You just can't use these two perks together at the moment, so I've moved back to Persistence. I have used Lingering Concealment in the past. This used to be way better with things like the Shadow Stab on the Block Knife and Tactical Ambush, because prior to, like, I think it was patch 6, no, it was patch 7, the melee damage, or the melee break on Cloak from Shadow Stab, would break your Cloak the moment you started charging your weapon. So this would start the 2 seconds of concealment from Lingering Concealment and lets you recharge your Camo Cloak while you're charging your Shadow Stab. That is no longer the case. Now your Camo Cloak will break once you actually release the button for Shadow Stab, which is better to actually get the full Camo Cloak damage effect on the double charge of Shadow Stab. Just, it's worse to actually keep your Cloak up, so it's quite a bit of a nerf in my opinion. So overall, Lingering Concealment still a good perk, just can't use it with this, and it's worse on melee weapons than it used to be. It used to be a lot better. Now, Ambush. When Camo Cloak deactivates, it startles nearby enemies. They will temporarily lose control or get knocked back. Cooldown is 25 seconds. 25-second cooldown is horrendous in this game. It's just way too long for something like this. And startling nearby enemies is not remotely as good as, you know, just dealing like an AoE damage to them. If this did like an AoE damage, this would be a goated perk. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And 25-second cooldown is pretty unacceptable, in my opinion, for like a perk effect this mid. So I would stick with these two. Now, as far as signature perks go, Evasion. After a perfectly timed dodge, Camo Cloak automatically activates without spending charge for 5 seconds. Cooldown is 30 seconds. This perk is pretty good. It's just that Evasion has way too long of a cooldown with 30 seconds. And really, you know, hot take, if they want this perk to be remotely as good as Pattern of Excellence, which is performing 3 consecutive headshots, restores equipment charged by 1, cooldown is 30 seconds, they're going to have to like remove the cooldown on this entirely or make it like 5 seconds, or, you know, just remove it from the just make sure your Camo Cloak 5 seconds is the entire cooldown, because even then it still might not be remotely as good as like having a 30-second melt-a-bomb the entire game, because this perk just needs some buffs. I'm gonna be honest, both of these do, really, because Emergency Override, when you receive lethal damage, Camo Cloak automatically activates without spending a charge and you become invulnerable for 5 seconds. Cooldown is 180 seconds. Both of these are significantly worse than Pattern of Excellence, because Pattern of Excellence is like one of the best perks in the entire game. 30-second melta bombs, 30-second shock grenades, 30-second crack grenades. That is so much value. Equipment recharge perks are already some of the best perks in this entire game, and this is the best equipment recharge perk in the entire game. So see where we're going with this, in that this is a god tier perk. Pattern of Excellence, completely broken, OP, amazing perk, always take this. Now we will talk about the Sniper's Prestige perks very briefly here. I have already mentioned Emperor's Grace in this video. When Camo Cloak activates, you become invulnerable to damage for 2 seconds, on top of having 0 knockback from anything in this game. You basically don't exist. S tier perk, incredible synergy with Purification. Awesome stuff. Just always take this. Versatile Precision, also awesome stuff. Performing a kill with your secondary weapon restores 15% if your primary weapon's ammo. Cooldown is 15 seconds. This perk pretty much just gives you a perfect ammo economy on every single weapon this guy can possibly have. This outright fixed both sniper builds and outright fixed rate of fire builds for like the Stalker Bolt Rifle and the Last Fusel. You can take whatever you want when you have this perk, because you pretty much never run out of ammo if you're properly conserving. Versatile Precision might be nerfed one day, cooldown being 15 seconds for an effect this powerful. Kind of low, but you know, as of right now, it's just a non-choice. You just take this perk. It's that good. Boosted Recharge. Collecting an armor boost restores ability charge by 100%. Trash tier perk. Armor boost is already like not super common in this game. There's no guarantee you're going to be the one to take it. And if you do take it, there's no guarantee that you even need your ability when you do. And really, this class has 0 issue with the Camo Cloak in the first place, because we have 2 ability recharge perks on our base tree. Versatility. After switching weapons, your secondary weapon deals 20% more damage. The effect lasts until reloading or switching back to your primary weapon. Not great, not terrible. It's, you know, damage is damage. 20% on your secondary is not horrific. We swap quite a bit in this class. It's just, I don't really put this over things like Conviction or Exacting Focus. Indomitable Spirit. While performing a gun strike, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits. You cannot be knocked back. This is a good no knockback effect, because we have pretty much no knockback effects on this class. This is just the worst version of this perk in the whole game, especially compared to things like Adrenaline Boost. And when we take it to stuff like Persistence, when Camo Cloak deactivates, you take 20% less health damage, you don't lose control. Upon taking heavy hits, it can be knocked back for 10 seconds on command. I think that's much better than Indomitable Spirit. Though if you aren't taking Persistence, I would just take Indomitable Spirit, because, you know, it's one of the only options you have. Though you can just omit it entirely if you want to. Conviction. When your armor is fully depleted, you take 25% less health damage for 15 seconds. This perk is really goated. 25% less health damage is huge, especially when your armor breaks, because when your armor breaks, that's when you actually start taking the health damage to begin with, and 15 seconds is a long uptime. All the other versions of Conviction are only 10 seconds, and I think that's mainly because this class only has 2 armor. It's not really intended to be in melee as much as the other classes in the first place. You also have a bunch of like get out of jail free cards with like your Camo Cloak in the first place. So Conviction, good in all classes it's on. I would pretty much always take this. Super underrated perk. Exacting Focus. After a gun strike, you deal 20% more range damage for 10 seconds. Even if you're just using the block knife, which, you know, most people really should be at this point, this perk is still god tier, still incredible. It's just 20% more range damage. Sometimes even hit some breakpoints with this. So if you really want to use this, I would take Emperor's Grace, Versatility, Versatile Precision, Conviction, and Exacting Focus. That's how I build my sniper. I think this works pretty fine. I never really feel like I'm missing anything with Indomitable Spirit, Versatility, especially not Boosted Recharge. You know, that's just my opinion. If you want to take something else, if you want to choose between these two, you sure can. Now, for Sniper's strongest build currently, I do still think it is the Last Fusel. There are some other perk options you can take here over these, things like Vantage Point or Adaptability, depending over the high capacity perk, but really the rate of fire Last Fusel is so good on us now because of Versatile Precision and our ability to have basically infinite ammo, and this is the perk setup I take on the weapon perks here. Alternatively, from the beam radius, you could just take the faster charge shot rate, though I really don't think this is necessary anymore because the rate of fire variant is already so good on us, and really we don't have an ammo economy issue to begin with, and beam radius pretty much just makes this weapon our horde clear on its own, which is kind of ridiculous on this gun, but that's just how the Last Fusel works in the first place. And as far as secondaries go, Heavy Bolt Pistol is definitely over the Inferno Pistol. Once you really get better with Sniper, you start to realize that the Inferno Pistol horde clear really is not remotely necessary on this guy, especially with his buffs to Purification and how good the Block Knife Skull Crusher are, because if you hold down, you know, like one tap on the combat knife, and then you hold down the heavy attack. You get to slap them around, set up gun strikes quite easily. I might make a video on that one day, but overall, this class really isn't as hard to melee down minors as people seem to think. But if you want to take fencing, you sure can, because most of your damage on this class to begin with this build setup will come from the last Fusil. Anyways, hope this build helped. Hope this guide helped on the perks. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. I'm sure a lot of people will answer. I'll try to answer them myself. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more, and let me know what you guys think about the sniper class overall. And also, I want to say thank you to all of my channel members for supporting this channel. You guys have made it a lot easier for me to make content. I really appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Peace.